Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this morning's headlines. Greek Parliament approves Eurozone deal by big majority. Angry protesters clash with police as Tsipras says he had no choice. Back home, petrol and diesel prices slashed by 2 rupees, but dampener in Delhi as government increases VAT rates. Government calls strategy meet ahead of Tuesday's monsoon session. Centre to chalk out float strategy as opposition parties close ranks. Prime Minister to make day-long visit to his constituency Varanasi. Modi slated to address a rally and inaugurate several projects, but heavy rains lash Holy City on the morn of his visit. And the second test match in the Ashes series to begin today. Australia attempt a comeback after first test loss against arch-rivals England. Well, after much opposition from the ruling Syriza party, Greek Parliament approved the crucial bailout package that would result in implementation of tougher reform measures. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras fought hard to convince the lawmakers, even as protests broke out on the streets, accusing him of turning his back on the people. Here's more.
Dramatic scenes were witnessed both inside and outside the Greek parliament, as crowds of anti-austerity protesters rallied on the streets of Athens. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras faced a tough time seeking approval for the third bailout deal struck with the international creditors. In a passionate speech just before the vote, Tsipras urged the leaders to approve the reforms. He said he did not believe in the deal himself, but defended his decision as the need of the hour to prevent the collapse of the banks and a bigger disaster for Greece.
Εγώ να παραδεχθώ ότι τα διαρθρωτικά μέτρα τα οποία φέρνουμε εμείς είναι σκληρά. Και εγώ δεν συμφωνώ, δεν πιστεύω ότι θα ευνοήσουν την ελληνική οικονομία. Και το λέω ανοιχτά. Αλλά λέω ότι είμαι υποχρεωμένος να τα εφαρμόσω. Αυτή είναι η διαφορά μας ίσως.
After heated discussions, Greek MPs finally approved tough economic measures demanded by the creditors to enable the 86 billion euros deal to go ahead. The legislation was passed by 229 to 64 votes, and not surprisingly, half of the no votes came from Tsipras' own party. Some members of the Syriza party, including the Deputy Finance Minister, announced their resignation over the deal.
Ποια είναι αυτά τα 50 δισεκατομμύρια ευρώ? Τι θα πουλήσετε? Τα γραφεία του ΣΥΡΙΖΑ στην πλατεία Κομουνδούρου? Τα 50 δις ευρώ είναι οι υδρογονάνθρακες. Είναι η εθνική περιουσία της Ελλάδος. Είναι το φυσικό αέριο που θέλουν να πάρουν οι Γερμανοί. Δεν θα πάρουν τίποτα όμως από την Ελλάδα και αυτά τα κατάπτυστα.
There have been reports that a cabinet reshuffle could be on the cards, but if the majority fails, Tsipras could risk facing snap elections. Accused of caving in to the demands of Eurozone leaders, Tsipras is losing credibility by the day. Opponents of the deal took to the streets on Wednesday. Protesters clashed with police forces throwing petrol bombs during anti-austerity rallies. Union and trade associations too held strikes. But despite a vote in favor of the bailout terms, an IMF report suggests that the package does not go far enough. It read that Greece would require some write-offs in the face of its highly unsustainable debts. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this morning to talk about this is the economist Amir Ullah Khan. Amir, very good morning and thank you for joining me on the program. Now, as far as Greece's bailout is concerned, you know, a very similar bailout deal was rejected by Greece a couple of weeks ago. A referendum also was held. But the deal that has been accepted now, of course, is very similar to the one that was rejected a couple of weeks ago.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is the problem that the Greek government is facing, that just 15 days earlier, they were arguing so strong against this whole package and got the entire country to vote with them in a referendum. And 2 weeks later, if the same head of state is now asking the same people to vote against what he was arguing for, it becomes a serious issue, and that's what the Greek citizens are worried about. and the parliament did have to vote for this new deal. It was, and you can see that on the streets, as you saw just now, that people are getting upset and frustrated that, you know, you ask the entire country to vote one way and then vote exactly the other way 2 weeks later, accepting the same conditions that you said were not acceptable.
Indeed.
So it is a serious issue, serious political issue.
Indeed, it is a serious political issue, but, the finance ministers of the Eurozone group, of course, are slated to meet later on today. What would be the immediate concern that they would be looking at as far as, dealing with the Greece issue is concerned?
I think the first thing that will strike them and they will have to discuss is how harshly the IMF has come down on this new measure, saying that, look, this is not enough. And if 10 lakh crore rupees of bailout is not enough, then how much is? Therefore, their first worry will be that they've come so far, they've extended a pretty handsome package. Now, can they pressurize this seething anger in Greece to do more? That is going to be their big concern. The second concern that they're going to have is how long can they continue this for? It is obvious that there is a great deal of resentment within Greece. It is obvious that so much is not enough. Yet there has been a great deal of reform that Greece has signed on to. It is not easy to sign on to such harsh labor measures, such harsh measures on pensions, and to control the central bank in such a manner. To do that and then expect that this is not enough is going to worry all of them, especially the Eurozone finance ministers.
Is the Eurozone carrying a big burden on its back by trying to support or bail out Greece at this juncture? Because, Greece has missed out on several, payments and has defaulted on one payment already. What's to say that it won't happen in the future again?
Yes. Oh, there is nothing to say that. But this question is an interesting one. It has both a yes and a no answer. No, in the sense that it's not too much for Europe to carry what is essentially a very small level of debt given the size of its economy. So Greece is a very small economy, $100 billion. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's something that Europe can afford right now. But on the other hand, the worry is not so much their ability to give this money or not. The worry really is whether such a thing will repeat. And everything indicates that the Greece tragedy, the Greek issue is not over. It will come back very soon. Because what this $100 billion is doing is just tinkering with a little debt here and there. The seriousness of the reform is not yet clear. The seriousness of how Greece will recover in the next few years is not clear. It's also not clear whether keeping such a strong currency is going to help the Eurozone itself and particularly Greece. So the problems for the European finance ministers are not over. They've in some sense begun in a new light now.
All right. Amarullah Khan, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for putting things into perspective for us and joining us with that perspective this morning. Well, moving on now, petrol and diesel prices have been cut by 2 rupees a litre, excluding local levies, in the second reduction of rates this month by oil companies. But petrol would actually become costlier in Delhi due to an increase in VAT rate in the national capital. The decrease in diesel prices would also be less in Delhi due to a hike in value-added tax by Arvind Kejriwal-led Aam Aadmi Party government. The new rates announced by the oil marketing companies are effective since midnight. The Delhi government's decision means that petrol prices in Delhi will go up by 28 paisa a litre. Opposition parties have flayed the Aam Aadmi Party government for its decision.
केजरीवाल जी की नीयत साफ नहीं है जनता के प्रति, जिस विश्वास से वो जीत के आए थे, जिस भरोसे एक तरफ से लाखों खर्चा कर रहे हैं, टेलीविजन पे एडवर्टीजमेंट दे रहे हैं, कह रहे हैं हमने सस्ती कर दी, हमने इतना बड़ा बजट पास किया, हमने कीमत सस्ती की, जो कहा सो किया, जो कहा उन्होंने वही तो नहीं किया।
आज वो सरकार जो दावा करती है कि आम आदमी की सरकार है, वो आम आदमी के कांधे पर बोझ बढ़ाती चली जा रही है। दिल्ली की बीजेपी की सरकार पेट्रोल और डीजल की कीमत बढ़ाती है, दिल्ली की केजरीवाल की सरकार वैट बढ़ाती है, आम आदमी को किसी भी तरह राहत न मिले, दोनों सरकारों ने ये तय कर रखा है।
कोई भी आदमी है जिसने अपना 2 व्हीलर या 4 व्हीलर लिया है, उसको अपना बजट वो कहीं से काटेगा। वो
बस से जाना पड़ेगा या साइकिल लेनी पड़ेगी, और क्या करेगी, साइकिल से जाना पड़ेगा जो इतनी महंगाई होगी।
दिल्ली की सेल कम हो जाएगी, जो पेट्रोल अभी बिक रहे हैं उस हिसाब से सारे तो हरियाणा ही भाग नहीं जाएंगे।
Here's a look at the other news and events lined up for today in our segment, The Day Ahead. BJP President Amit Shah will flag off 160 Parivartan Raths from Patna as the NDA looks to formally launch its campaign for the crucial assembly polls scheduled later this year. Ramvilas Paswan, Upendra Kushwaha and former Chief Minister Jitan Ram Manjhi will join Amit Shah at the event. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is likely to hold between 15 to 20 rallies in the state starting from July 25th. The Congress has called a statewide Bandh in Madhya Pradesh seeking resignation of Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan over the Vyapam scam. Congress has alleged that an accused in the scandal extended favours to Union Minister Narendra Pradhan and other BJP and RSS leaders. The Central Bureau of Investigation has registered 3 FIRs and formally launched its probe in the Vyapam scam. Former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapakse will launch his party's campaign for the August 17 general elections. Rajapakse plans to represent his United People's Freedom Alliance for a seat in the 225-member assembly. Rajapakse, who lost the 8th January presidential election, was formally accepted as a candidate on Monday to stand in the upcoming polls. Japan's National Security Advisor Shotaro Yachi will visit China in a trip seen as a potential precursor to another summit between Tokyo and Beijing. The Japanese government has said that the trip by Yachi is part of routine work to build ties with his counterparts around the world. Strains over territorial disputes and attitudes towards wartime history continue to divide the two countries. Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to visit his Lok Sabha constituency Varanasi today. We'll tell you all about it on the other side of the short break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Hottest topics.
If you can facilitate the opening up and the expansion of the international border trade, you can add to the economy.
370 धारा जो है वो जम्मू कश्मीर को मुल्क के साथ जोड़े रखती है.
Candid confessions.
The Congress has not been able to communicate.
We have to revive our links with the masses.
World-class healthcare is available to only a handful of people in this country.
Causing controversies.
A lot of leaders today think that they rule by divine right.
Now, media has become manageable.
Watch RSTV engaged personalities to the point. Every Wednesday, 10 p.m., Thursday, 1:30 and 5:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, the centre will hold a strategy meeting today ahead of the monsoon session that begins on Tuesday. Parliamentary Affairs Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu will meet union ministers and secretaries in Parliament House to give a final shape to the government's legislative agenda. The centre will also chalk out its floor strategy with opposition parties closing ranks against it on issues like the Vyapam scam, Lalit Modi controversy and the socio-economic caste census. The 3-week-long monsoon session will begin on July 21st. Venkaiah Naidu will also meet leaders of all parties in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha on July 20th. Lok Sabha Speaker Sumitra Mahajan will also hold an all-party meeting on the 20th of July. Well, joining me for a chat this morning to talk about this is our correspondent Shyam Sundar. Shyam, as far as the monsoon session of Parliament is concerned, the government clearly seems to be worried about what the opposition strategy is. A united opposition, of course, certainly seems like it's not going to let or allow Parliament to function.
Definitely, Frank, and after yesterday's Niti Aayog meeting, it is very, very clear that opposition is closing ranks and it is going to be very, very difficult task for the government in the parliament. As we know that there are very important bills, including land bill and GST bills. These two bills are pending in the parliament. One is in Lok Sabha and other is in Rajya Sabha. Apart from these two bills, government plans to bring 11 new bills, including electricity amendment bill. So government has a heavy and very important agenda for the coming monsoon session. But as opposition parties are saying that they are going to raise many issues from Lalit Gate to Vyapam. There are many important issues opposition would like to raise in the parliament, and there are chances that the whole monsoon session is washed out if there is no understanding between opposition and the government.
Well, Shyam, this is indeed the ideal situation as far as the opposition is concerned to corner the government. But is there some kind of a formula that is being worked out by the government and the opposition parties to allow the monsoon session of parliament to go on?
Well, we have seen some occasions when it looks like that Parliament will not function, but some kind of formula is worked out. Government, the senior ministers, they reach out to opposition at the level of Prime Minister. There are times we have seen efforts, and certain bills, for at least for some time, Parliament is allowed to function. But this time, the way Congress chief ministers boycotted the Niti Aayog meeting, and not only Congress chief ministers but Chief Minister of West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and Odisha, they did participate in Niti Aayog meeting. So as of now, it doesn't look like that opposition is going to give any space to the government because the Bihar elections are coming, and opposition would not like to give any space to the government, and they will try to grill government on the issue of corruption, because Modi government's claim was that in last 1 year there is no scam and there is no allegations of corruption against Modi government. But the way the chief ministers of BJP are facing corruption charges, especially in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, this is the time when opposition would like to make a big issue out of it.
Indeed. We'll have to wait and see what happens, of course, as far as the monsoon session is concerned. It's just a few days away from now. Thank you so much, Shyam Sundar, for joining us on the phone line and giving us that perspective. Now, moving on, of course, a week ahead of the upcoming monsoon session, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to meet his cabinet to discuss pending bills in both the houses. The cabinet is likely to take up a string of amendments proposed to the arbitration law in order to end delays and eliminate high costs in expectation to provide ease in doing business across the country. The centre plans to bring a bill to amend the law in the monsoon session of Parliament after cancelling their earlier plans of bringing an ordinance to fasten the move. A proposal for redevelopment of railway stations across the country is based on suggestions obtained from interested players could be taken up for consideration by the cabinet today. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be on a day-long visit to his Lok Sabha constituency, Varanasi. He will be addressing a public rally and will also inaugurate a power project scheme and open a trauma centre at the Banaras Hindu University. But it has been raining heavily in the holy city since morning. As per the Prime Minister's schedule, Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav and Governor Ram Naik will receive him at the airport. Modi is slated to launch an integrated power development scheme, give a go-ahead to the four-laning of the Varanasi Babatpur Road and lay the foundation stone of a ring road. He will also lay the foundation stones for 2 power substations and inaugurate the much-awaited trauma centre of the Banaras Hindu University. He is later slated to address a public gathering. Modi's June 28th rally in the holy city was cancelled due to heavy rain. The security has been tightened, with the security at the venues fully in control of the SPG. Moving on now, Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi will begin his 2-day Rajasthan visit today. His first stop will be at Suratgarh of Sri Ganganagar district, where he will address state party leaders and workers. Later, he will leave for Hanumangarh, where he is expected to lend force to the demand of Hanumangarh villagers who have been asking the Punjab government to clean Indira Gandhi Canal, supplying water to several districts of northwest Rajasthan. He is also likely to speak about the need to prevent smuggling of legally grown opium in Rajasthan to Punjab areas from across the Bathinda border. The visits to various states as seen as part of Rahul's yatra across India to re-establish Congress party's connect with the people. Well, India has conveyed to Pakistan that it is disappointed with it over the fresh breach at the line of control. Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan, TCA Raghavan, conveyed India's concerns with the Pakistan Foreign Secretary twice after a woman was killed in park firing. India will be lodging a formal protest with Pakistan after getting all the facts on the case. Ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Jammu and Kashmir on Friday, Pakistan Rangers violated the ceasefire twice on Wednesday, resorting to firing and mortar shelling in the Akhnur sector, in which a woman was killed and 6 others, including 2 BSF jawans, were injured. It was the 7th ceasefire violation by Pakistani troops this month. Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, new pictures from NASA's New Horizons spacecraft show ice mountains on Pluto. That and sports news coming up. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
A new government in New Delhi. New faces.
People are not investing because they are scared of your tax administration.
New thinking.
The auction process is a fair and good process.
You cannot have a one-size-fits-all reform policy.
For insights and perspective.
Judiciary should be more concerned about corruption within itself.
The Modi government slogan of अच्छे दिन आने वाले हैं. Soon the people's slogan will be हमारे पुराने दिन लौटा दो.
The biggest show on economic policy. Watch State of the Economy.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, US President Barack Obama has said that the landmark agreement on Iran was the best way to avoid a nuclear arms race. Obama made his case in a nationally televised news conference, responding to critics at home and abroad after Iran and 6 world powers sealed an accord in Vienna on Tuesday to restrict Tehran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Obama said that if the United States does not seize the opportunity for a deal, future generations will judge them harshly. Critics say that the deal contains loopholes and will provide Tehran with an infusion of unfrozen assets to fund its proxies in sectarian conflicts ranging from Syria to Iraq to Yemen. US Defense Secretary Ash Carter will travel to Saudi Arabia as part of Obama's efforts to convince skeptical allies in the region about the benefits of the deal.
Secretary of Defense Ash Carter will be going out to Israel this weekend and to Saudi Arabia. And he will be continuing our practical cooperation with both Israel and our partners in the Gulf.
There really are only 2 alternatives here. Either the issue of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon is resolved diplomatically through a negotiation, or it's resolved through force, through war.
Here's a look now at the other big developments from around the world in our World Wrap. Defense security forces foiled an attack on military installations this week, arresting 4 people whose leaders had links to jailed jihadists. Officials say that the attackers were planning to act in January 2016 and were looking to target a senior military official in south of France. The arrests were made a day before France's national public holiday of Bastille Day. France is on high alert after 17 people were killed in attacks in and around Paris in January. Libya has accused the United Nations Security Council of hampering its fight against terrorism. Libya complained that the Sanctions Committee had not responded to its request to import weapons to fight the Islamic State militants. They say that the committee is indirectly contributing to the instability. Libya said that the threat of IS could only be tackled once warring parties agree on a government of national unity. Pro-government militia have claimed making further advances against the Houthi rebels in Yemeni city of Aden. President Hadi is personally supervising the offensive to drive the rebels out of Aden. Fighters backed by Saudi-led coalition strikes have taken the main seaport and the neighboring district of Mualla. It comes a day after they regained control of the international airport. South Korean officials left for North Korea today to hold talks over the North's unilateral move to raise wages for its workers at the Kisong Joint Industrial Complex. The Kisong complex has been a much-needed source of income for the impoverished North and a cheap source of workers for labor-intensive South Korean firms. The North Korean agency that supervises the complex has demanded an increase in the minimum monthly wage for its workers, but South has rejected the demand, saying the unilateral increase violated agreements. Floods and torrential rains in Bolivia caused havoc in the Santa Cruz province, killing one and injuring others. Winds of up to 80 kilometers per hour tore through roofs of houses and damaged vehicles. Several people were left stranded on islets due to intense rainfall. Local authorities and Air Force helicopters were deployed to help rescue the victims. Well, once considered an icy dead world, NASA's New Horizons science team has recorded signs of geological activity on Pluto and its moon, Charon. The new images acquired by NASA reveal methane gas and topography complete with mountains and water in great abundance. The spacecraft sped past the dwarf planet on Tuesday, getting as close as 12,500 kilometers and grabbing a huge volume of data. The scientists say that the distant planet has mountains made of ice that are as high as those in the Rockies. The team has also named the prominent heart-shaped region on Pluto after the world's discoverer, Clyde Tombaugh. The New Horizons spacecraft passed by the tiny planet on Tuesday, capping a historic journey of 3 billion miles that began 9.5 years ago.
Yesterday, America's space program took another historic leap for humankind. Today, the New Horizons team is bringing what was previously a blurred point of light into focus.
As John said, the steep topography means that the bedrock that makes those mountains must be made of H2O, of water ice. So even before the composition team tells us that they found places where the nitrogen veneer has been eroded or scraped off, and we see water ice on Pluto for the first time, we can be very sure that the water is there in great abundance. And actually models predicted that, but it's nice to see it driven home.
Moving on to some sports news now. The second test of the Ashes series between England and Australia will begin at the Lord's Cricket Ground today. England will look to carry on the good form from the first test, which they won by 169 runs, but will be wary of an Australian resurgence. Here's the match preview.
Hosts England will go into the second test with a feel-good factor after taking 1-0 lead in the series. However, England captain Alistair Cook says Australia remain favourites to claim the Ashes despite his side's superb 169-run first test victory in Cardiff.
Yeah, Australia probably still our favourites because they've only got to retain the Ashes, I suppose. But, you know, that's, as I said at the beginning of the series, is not played on paper, not played on potential. It's what people deliver out there. And, you know, in that first game, we played pretty well.
England are taking precautions over the fitness of all-round Moeen Ali and are hoping for his fitness before the Lord's Test. After a poor display at the World Cup at the start of the year, England are back in the good books after showing new attacking intent against New Zealand and then getting off to an Ashes flyer with an impressive victory.
You know, certainly this summer there's been a really good feel-good factor about English cricket. You know, whether we've won or lost, it's been a bit of a wave, a bit of a crest of a wave, and you know everyone's got behind the team from New Zealand onwards.
Australia, on the other hand, will look to bounce back from the defeat despite some injury concerns. Left-arm pace bowler Mitchell Starc, who took 7 wickets in the first test, is expected to be fit despite struggling with an ankle injury. Wicketkeeper Brad Haddin has not been included for the second test. He will be replaced by debutant Peter Neville.
And I'm really confident we bring someone in who's in good form, batted beautifully in the tour game, and I think everyone that has seen Nev wicketkeep knows how good he is.
The Lord's pitch is expected to have more pace and carry than what was offered at Cardiff. Rain has hampered preparation slightly, but the forecast for the match is for fine weather. England will still have the memories of 5-0 thrashing in the last Ashes series. However, the Australians have not won a series in England since 2001. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
That's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Have a nice day.